Previously on X-Men.
We're near the end of LGBTQ Pride Month, and with the popularity of the recent Disney Plus cartoon, X-Men '97, my newsfeed has been filled with posts like this. This leads me to something I've wanted to get off my chest for a long time, as it raises a question that's been long debated. Are the X-Men gay? Welcome back to Compelled by Schlock. I'm Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson, and this is a channel where we like to dissect all types of fantastical stories to look at their deeper meanings. If that sounds interesting to you, please hit subscribe so that you can see when we upload more videos. So back to our main question. Are the X-Men gay? Well, yes. Are the X-Men black? Yes. Are they Jewish? Also yes. You see, the X-Men were never meant to be a one-to-one allegory that represents any single group of people, because the metaphor can only go so far. If the X-Men are supposed to be representative of the LGBTQ community, then I think a more interesting question is, who's the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Who wants to take on that mantle? Now, I've seen people draw parallels between the X-Men being closeted, whereas Magneto and his goons, conveniently changed to the Brotherhood, are compared to the out and proud Pride movement.
Mutant and proud.
A main theme of the 90s cartoon series was that people fear what they don't understand. But you see, the big problem here is that mutants aren't just misunderstood, they're actually dangerous. The rest of humanity has every right to be afraid and potentially hostile to mutants. When Magneto lifts an entire bridge, presumably killing hundreds of people in just a few minutes, it's more than reasonable for regular human beings to be suspicious of mutants. Sure, a mutant person is just like you and me, but hopefully they're not a psychopath, or worse, an ideological zealot. What's really interesting is that we see how the idea of the X-Men represent this group or that group, how it shows its limitations in Marvel's 2006 crossover event, Civil War, the comic, not the movie. In Civil War, society has deemed that superpowered humans like Iron Man and Captain America are just too dangerous, and that they need to expose their true identities so that they can become part of a public registry and have more regulation. Iron Man is on board with the idea, and Cap is against it, thus sparking the Marvel Civil War. The comic is clearly a metaphor for gun control in the United States. One side believes that they should be left to their own devices because they do substantially more good than harm, and the other side believes that by forcing regulations on superheroes, there will be less casualties when supervillains decide to try and blow up the world or whatever. However, the superpowered humans suspiciously missing from this fight are the X-Men. In fact, they almost completely check out of the story around book number 4. Tony Stark, Iron Man, tries to recruit Emma Frost and the X-Men to his cause, and this is what Emma Frost has to say about the whole situation. "Oh, we don't want a fight, darling. We're perfectly happy to remain on this reservation they've made for us. All we ask is that you leave us alone, and in return you have our word that we won't join forces with your star-spangled friend." Ignoring the crazy logic of the X-Men and the Avengers existing in the same universe, a topic I might have to get into in a different video, it's clear why the X-Men have to sit this one out. You see, they've been fighting for mutant rights their whole lives. They've already rejected the idea of a Mutant Registration Act. Both the X-Men and their mutant enemies would have to be on Captain America's non-registration side, thus insanely tipping the scales of the entire story. What I love about Marvel comics and characters is that historically, they've done really well with exploring deep philosophical and political ideas framed by fun action and superheroes. While Civil War uses superpowered heroes and villains to explore the dichotomy between security and freedom by asking the question, what would we do if these extremely dangerous people actually existed? The X-Men are mostly absent because that's where their metaphor ends. The X-Men have come to be viewed as a story about the struggles of marginalized people, the LGBTQ community, immigrants, the civil rights movement. I honestly don't care if any of the individuals within the world of the X-Men identify as gay or non-binary or whatever. I think it works just fine because it reflects the world we live in and it gives the story a realistic grounding. The world of the X-Men has always been incredibly diverse, not only by showing people of different skin color, backgrounds, class, or sexual preferences, but by also showing us different ways of thinking. And that's where the real strength of the X-Men story lies. But what I don't like is ideological flag planting and reappropriation of well-established characters and storylines, destroying sacred cows just to make a point. And I think this is where many other fans stand. This has been happening with nostalgic properties for nearly a decade now, and I think the general public is starting to catch on. And that's why I've largely stayed away from the latest X-Men 97, even though that theme song calls to me so bad. I don't want to witness something I've loved and identified with from childhood taken and reappropriated, taken as a scalp just to prove a point. And I think you can agree that that's fairly reasonable. I'm sure there are people who will say I'm way off base and they'll scoff at the irony of what I'm saying, that the X-Men is now more diverse and representative than ever. But if that's the case, I'd like to point to Season 4, Episode 8 of the original animated series where Wolverine first meets Nightcrawler, a devout Catholic monk. In this episode, Wolverine is surly and he's not sold on the idea of God because of all the hardships he's endured throughout his life.
What are you talking about? We're mutants. God gave up on us a long time ago.
But by the end of the episode, we see Wolverine in a church praying and renewing his faith.
I will give thanks to you, O Lord, for though you were angry with me, your anger turned away and you comforted me. I will trust and will not be afraid.
Could this episode be made today on Disney Plus? Is there anything like this in the new series? Maybe I'm completely wrong and I am way off base. But if this sentiment were brought into the show, I think it would go a long way to fulfilling the original spirit of the X-Men story by handing out an olive branch and trying to bridge the ideological gap between fans. So who are the X-Men supposed to represent? You. They represent you as an individual. If we look at how the X-Men were originally portrayed, they're mostly male, straight, yes, even Iceman.
Wowee! Looks like she was poured into that uniform.
White, and they go to a private school. They're not exactly what we would consider marginalized. But the key ingredient here isn't their intersectionality, but the fact that they're teenagers. You see, not everyone can relate to what it's like to be gay or Jewish, an immigrant, or even what it's like to be the weird kid that sits inside during recess and reads comic books. But hopefully everyone knows or will know what it's like to be an awkward teenager, to feel like you don't fit in at one time or another. We all experience times in our lives when we feel outcast and ostracized or just plain different. And that's not a very good feeling. It can understandably lead to a lot of hurt. What the X-Men stories ask us to do is decide what we're going to do with those feelings. Are we going to use those past hurts and victimhood as an excuse to get back at those who have wronged us? Or will we harness those feelings and use our uniqueness to make the world a better place for everyone? And for those who've chosen a dark path, like Magneto, can they be redeemed and become the new leader of the X-Men, fighting for peaceful coexistence and understanding? So the X-Men ask us, which way do we choose? Hero or villain? Xavier or Magneto? But what do I know? Am I on to something or am I way off base? Should I watch X-Men 97 so I can hear that sweet, sweet theme music? Let me know in the comments and check out these videos over here for more superhero breakdowns. Schlock on, guys!
Wowee! It looks like she was poured into that uniform.
When the X-Men are all perving on Jean Grey.